Hi everyone, it's me, ya boy, Uncle Melty. I'm tired, but I'm gonna persevere because I love you, and because it's time to talk about not one, but two brand new albums from Panopticon entitled Laurentian Blue and Songs of Hiraeth, Songs of Hiraeth. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Let's find out together before somebody yells at me in the comments, because somebody always does. Because y'all love jumping on a motherfucker for the tiniest little mispronunciation, the tiniest little grammar mistake. Because you're so perfect! All the damn time, too! Ah!
Like in Welsh, you could say it as Hiraeth.
Hiraeth. Hiraeth.
Or in Welsh, Hiraeth.
Okay.
Here are more videos.
Okay. Cool. Hiraeth. No, don't go. I don't need a fucking ad for a fucking movie. Thank you, though, YouTube. Hiraeth. More importantly, that's right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. We've gotten a double dose of new music from Panopticon. One of the best, most unique, most innovative, modern American black metal bands known specifically for their mix of raw, atmospheric black metal and Appalachian folk music and bluegrass and Americana. Their music is consistently equal parts tender, tranquil, lush, and also dark, brutal, cathartic, explosive. They've also consistently done a great job that really connects with people, that feels urgent, that feels poignant, that feels important and powerful. They talk a lot about mental illness and isolation and loneliness and trying to be a better, healthier person and persevering through dark, challenging, complicated parts and chapters of your life, trying to be better. They've also talked a lot about a variety of different political, social, environmental disasters and catastrophes. Just great shit, man. Like all the way through. Like, even the worst Panopticon album is still like a pretty damn good album by all measures. At least that's how I feel. With all this in mind, I was very obviously, very undeniably, very excited for this double whammy of brand new Panopticon music, and I am happy to report that the hype is mostly real. I'm gonna let you know right off the bat. This is not the same kind of emotional wrecking ball that, And Again Into the Light or The Rhyme of Memory were, at least not for me. I'm just gonna let you know right off the goddamn bat, because I know expectations are high, because I am consistently glazing this band the fuck up like you wouldn't believe. That being said, these are both still great albums that I think represent an important part of the Panopticon story and everything that they do and everything that they are. And there is still some really great music on here that I think will be very cathartic, that I think will be very powerful, and for some people could prove to be very emotional for a bunch of different reasons. Let's start by talking about Songs of Hiraf, coincidentally the album that I feel is most likely to resonate with the Metal Meltdown audience, with all of y'all. What makes this album really interesting and compelling to me right off the bat is that it kind of acts as like a time capsule of a very specific, early, primitive era of Panopticon. This is a compilation album with a variety of tracks written and recorded from 2009 to 2011, originally intended for some splits and EPs and other Panopticon projects that never really got off the ground, and as a result, all of these songs were kind of abandoned and forgot about and left on a shelf. Until now, of course. Duh. It's interesting to see a more primitive kind of Panopticon here, with definitely some of the more evocative, melancholic kinds of textures and songwriting structures that I would come to know Panopticon for having, but not quite the same kind of Appalachian folk, Americana, bluegrass fusion shit that would define them post Roads to North. It is the most full-blown, raw black metal that I think Panopticon has ever been. There's static and feedback all across the record. Everything has a very lo-fi kind of quality to it, without necessarily sounding like crap, without necessarily sounding like a shitty old fucking demo recorded in somebody's garage. Tons of cold, icy, ferocious tremolo riffing and blast beats and black metal shrieks all across the board here. There are some clean vocals, but they do take on this more ethereal, ominous kind of feel and presence. Most interesting, though, is the more kind of like Norwegian, Scandinavian kind of aesthetic here. Like, this has more in common with like second wave Norwegian black metal than it does with like other kind of American black metal of this time, like say Wolves in the Throne Room or whatever else have you. And that's partially because at this time, Austin Lund and Panopticon and his crew were touring Europe and Norway and the Scandinavian regions pretty frequently, and were heavily inspired by this as a byproduct. I mean, yeah, sure, there are still plenty of moody, melancholic textures and soundscapes and sections, and acoustic guitar driven and dominated sections with like folksy rustic goodness that absolutely wouldn't be out of place on, say, a Panopticon record, but for the most part, this has the boldness, the atmosphere, the grandiosity of a classic kind of like 90s Norwegian atmospheric black metal record. It's very adventurous, it's very cinematic, it's very evocative and expressive. Cuts like From Bergen to Jotunheim and The White Mountain View are absolutely fantastic, and despite their more simplistic instrumentation, can still effectively pull on the heartstrings. And I do like that I'm seeing glimpses of the Panopticon that I know through these more rustic, folksy bits, through these more moody, melancholic sections, yes, but also occasionally through more complex, nuanced riffage, and also through some still very like provocative commentary. The End Is Growing Near, for instance, very explicitly details how industrial agriculture and just the carelessness in general of humanity is destroying the planet. It's poisoning our food, and it's making us worse as a society. Whereas Haunted America 2 talks about generations of violence and genocide inflicted upon the native and indigenous populations of North America. I will say I'm not really a huge fan of the opening number, Road to Bergen. I'm not a huge fan of the audibly, inarguably overblown programmed drums, and I'm not a huge fan of the generally slow, kind of tepid pace, or the fact that this is 10 minutes long, extremely unnecessary in my opinion. But hey, you can't win them all. If you've been wanting Panopticon to just be a full-blown, raw, atmospheric black metal band, this is the closest you're gonna get. I'm feeling a solid 3.5 out of 5 on this bad boy, leaning towards a 4. And then there's Laurentian Blue, the actually brand new album with actually completely brand new original material. But the twist here is that this has no black metal influence whatsoever. Not in the music, not in the tone, not in the general aesthetic and vibe of the album. This is a full-blown dark folk Americana album through and through. And I totally understand that this is where a lot of you probably tune the fuck out. And that's fine. I don't actually give that much of a crap. But I promise you, if you're willing to ride with Laurentian Blue, even though it's not the most totally true, epic, cult black metal record, it's still full of some pretty powerful, surprising moments. For me, Panopticon has been at their best when they've leaned further into this sound. This side of Panopticon has consistently paved the way for some of the best moments on nearly every Panopticon album over the course of the past, 13, 14 years or so. And it's really just because Austin Lund and dark folk Americana music are a match made in heaven. He just kind of gets it. Dark folk, Americana music, and everything kind of adjacent to this stuff demands vulnerability, it demands authenticity, and Austin Lund is a very real, sincere, passionate person who cares very deeply about a lot of different things. And he's able to pour all of that into this genre so effortlessly, so seamlessly. His very humble, quiet, measured, earthy vocal tone and presence and aura, combined with the acoustic guitars and the swelling strings and the little dynamics and shades and textures, do a great job too at transporting you to a different kind of place and environment. When I'm listening to Laurentian Blue, suddenly it's not mid-August and I'm not dealing with this obnoxious heat in downtown Toronto. Suddenly it's early March or late February, and I'm in a cabin somewhere in the rural United States in the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains, wherever, and I'm on the deck, and I'm drinking like dark coffee, or maybe I've got a little bit of whiskey or something like that, and I'm just kind of watching like the rain fall and the snow fall off the treetops on this like kind of like cold, gray, solemn, but not necessarily like uncomfortable or unpleasant morning. It is a very introspective album and very much about navigating various issues surrounding love, faith, freedom, personal loss, political and social turmoil, nature and the environment. From what I understand, it is also meant to be a companion piece to And Again Into the Light, released back in 2021, which makes sense because it dealt with very similar themes in a very stark and powerful manner as well. And it's worth noting that whereas And Again Into the Light felt like they were glimmers of hope and optimism, this is substantially darker. Like, even though it doesn't have big metal riffs and drums and big screaming vocals, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's still not quite heavy in tone. And in fact, lyrically, tonally, conceptually, it's arguably heavier than some more recent albums we've talked about here. But again, it handles it all very well. It's able to go into this more uncomfortable, challenging territory without necessarily being an uncomfortable or challenging record. Like, as dark as it gets, songs like A Poetry in Roadkill, Flowers in the Ditch, An Argument with God, This Mortal Coil is Rusted, it's all genuinely really beautiful stuff. For me, this album is a strong, solid, very enthusiastic 4 out of 5, and honestly, I could see the score going up. I just think it's really, really, really well done. It's interesting, too, how both of these albums are great companion pieces for each other. They balance each other out really well, in a way. I don't know if that was 100% intentional, but I'm not convinced it was 100% unintentional either, especially considering they were both released on the same fucking day. Through these albums, we see how much Austin and Panopticon have evolved and matured and progressed as a band, but Songs of Hiraf is still very much a time capsule. These guys were 20 years old, just being inspired by making metal and wanting to make metal and touring the world and experiencing so much for the very first time. It deals with very harsh subject matter, don't get me wrong, but there's also kind of an innocence and wonder to the album in certain moments as well, whereas Laurentian Blue is very much about dealing with the consequences of an entire lifetime of shit that has happened since. There's oddly this almost kind of warm, nostalgic kind of comfort to Songs of Hiraeth that contrasts with the more uncomfortable, introspective, and challenging dark folk of Laurentian Blue. These albums end up being the yin to each other's yang, and a testament to how much we as people and how much life in the world can change so rapidly in such a small amount of time. There's real beauty in that, honestly, and that's why I recommend listening to both of these albums together as a singular package if you can. Listen to Songs of Hiraf first, and then go to Laurentian Blue to kind of get the full feel of what I'm talking about. And, I've got nothing else to say. And I didn't realize that until I opened my mouth just a second ago. So I guess we're done? Bit of an anticlimactic end, I know, but like, I got nothing else to say, so fuck it, we donezo. That's it. Hi, hello, what's up, how you doing? Did you enjoy this video? That's awesome. Did you enjoy these albums? Let me know in the comments below. Press subscribe, boom other videos, join us on Discord, and as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.